The turning point of self-destruction. The turning point of self-destruction happens at the exact moment I experience living. For example, when I map out my life and my future, figuring out what I want to do and feeling the joy of hopeful anticipation, I suddenly get overwhelmed by the external world, by this visualization of a beautiful future. Then comes the time to actually take action to achieve that future. It is precisely this state of I live, I exist, I take action that triggers a downward spiral toward total self-destruction. When I am truly living, I execute my plans and move upward. I gravitate toward better environments, toward strong, healthy personalities and good people. I establish firm boundaries to expel what I dislike. I feel comfortable, and I survive. As I survive, I continue to climb upward, developing myself, and in turn, contributing to the development of the society made up of individuals like me. Note on living: to live means taking action, experiencing emotions, making judgments, and holding my own opinions. In the past, whenever I tried to live, to move upward, I was repeatedly assaulted and suppressed by those beneath me. As a result, the moment I begin to live, it triggers a coping mechanism to go downward and destroy myself on their behalf. This downward spiral is triggered the second I decide to do something, exercise my own judgment, or focus. Embodying reality versus the dissociative death state. A living being has their own time, their own basic needs, their own resources, and their own dreams. I must plan my life and act on those plans to fulfill them. The process of fulfillment, achieving one thing after another, is a continuous upward trajectory. To execute and to improve is to constantly move upward. When I envision a bright future, it means I am capable of surviving, and I feel happy. Then, I must act and implement. Only through implementation do I truly live and exist. To implement, I have so many things to do. Constantly taking action to achieve my next life goal is what keeps me alive. Consistently moving my physical body to get things done is how I remain alive and acknowledge reality. Through this bodily action, my eyes look and see the world with total clarity, rather than falling into that dissociative death state of being overwhelmed by the outside world. When I live, I possess subjectivity and agency, the innate discretion to seek benefits and avoid harm. Only then do I accept the truth. I live only when I act through my physical body, and when I live, I refuse to spiral downward into a dissociative death state, projecting my own life force onto the outside world. Why living triggers the impulse to plunge downward. Living triggers a destruction response because when I live, I naturally move upward towards strong, healthy personalities and better places, instead of accepting the proximity, exploitation, assault, projection, and parasitism of those I dislike. When I live, the parasites continue to lose their grip, they can no longer project themselves onto those above them. Therefore, my moment of living is instantly hijacked and corrupted. Instead of moving upward, I plunge downward into dissociative self-destruction. I cannot face reality or stay in the present moment, because stopping in the present means I would have to start living. It is just like why I cannot bear to be alone, and why I cannot stop scrolling through my phone to just rest, feel comfortable, be in solitude, or simply do one pure thing, like sleeping or waking up. If I did those things, I would be alive, and my physical body would unleash the truth. I would stop dissociating, acknowledge everything, my eyes would see the reality clearly, and I would survive. The moment I step out of dissociation into a state of living, I am forced to move upward. I have to solve problems rather than distorting them. Simply acknowledging reality is an upward move, because once I acknowledge it, I am alive, and I must do something. Therefore, I cannot stop to just be with myself, I cannot let my eyes see clearly, and I cannot face reality. I must immediately plunge downward and destroy myself. Accepting the death projection of the abuser. Instead of staying with myself to practice my plans, seeking out truly strong, healthy personalities, fighting back to reclaim my hard-earned grades or wages, or firing and expelling abusers from my boundaries, even though I am completely justified, stronger, and in the right, and could easily expel them, I accept the abuser's death projection. Instead of defending my own interests against abusers who could easily be penalized, I step aside and choose to destroy myself for them. Trauma survivors unfortunately grow up in environments devoid of self-regulation. They are assaulted, projected upon, and turned into scapegoats. As a result, survivors do not live proactively. They suppress their own daily needs, their resources, and their strength. They have long forfeited active living, acquiring resources, protecting what is theirs, and fighting back to clear their boundaries. Reality is crucial. What our physical bodies do reveals the actual truth. We must act rather than letting our minds project ourselves onto the outside world to destroy ourselves for others or distort reality. Only by moving toward the good, distancing ourselves from the bad, and eliminating the toxic can we survive, develop, and push society forward. Returning to the body and recognizing malice. I am truly alive, grounded in reality, and capable of distinguishing right from wrong only when I live by the actions of my physical body without distorting them. When my body goes to a certain place, it feels comfortable. When my body distances itself from a certain group of people, it feels uncomfortable. If I listen to this, the subsequent envy, assault, bullying, antagonism, and suppression from those people will not happen. When I act according to my body's signals, acknowledge their malice, and confront it, I become grounded in reality. I will move to better places, my life will keep improving, and I will expel the toxic elements. When I live, I acknowledge that they are bad and have done evil things to me. Fighting back and expelling them is not a loss, rather, this is the very reality of me living and surviving. I will continue to recognize my own worth and strength, free from gaslighting and distortion. The blindness of dissociation versus the sight of survival. Trauma survivors who grew up around assault and bullying have a completely different operating system than healthy people raised in strong, civilized environments. Survivors do not live actively or maintain self-control. Instead, they dissociate, accept external projections, distort reality, and act as scapegoats. While healthy survival means living actively through physical action, survivors fail to embody their physical selves. The more severe the trauma, the deeper the dissociation. Even though we are born with eyes and sight meant to look and see the world clearly, everything becomes completely blurry under severe trauma. Survivors become too terrified to look at the world, to see others clearly, or to remember. Because if their eyes actually looked and saw clearly, if they acknowledged the truth, they would have to live. They would have to do something, and they would no longer destroy themselves for the outside world or be manipulated by external harms. In these moments, survivors have already suppressed their own bodies, just as their abusers criminally suppressed them during infancy or periods of vulnerability. Instead of acting on their bodily instincts to set boundaries and expel the threat, they lean into the contact. When the abuser attacks again, the survivor erupts. This eruption finally releases reality. I am the one on top. I will expel them from my boundaries to sustain my peace, comfort, well-being, confidence, abundance, growth, progress, and strength. And then, the trigger point hits. This truth surfaces: you are alive, and you are about to expel the toxic parasite below you, but in that exact split second, you plunge downward to die in its place, and you stop fighting. The body is simply unaccustomed to living. The more those entities refuse to self-regulate, the more they are weeded out by reality and descend into death, and the closer they are to death, the more intensely they project that death onto you, driven entirely to harm others. The moment you die, you accept every single projection from the outside world. Because the body is unaccustomed to living, you fail to stay grounded in the actual truth: I am meant to survive, I am capable of surviving. I have worked so hard on my inner and outer self, I am excellent, highly capable of acquiring resources, and powerful. If I live and fight back, I am forced to be alive. I am forced to move upward, and I am forced to acknowledge the absolute truth. Breaking the chronic hunch. Trauma survivors are rarely in a state of truly living or letting their bodies breathe freely. They often develop a chronic hunch, afraid to take up space or exhibit a sense of presence. They are afraid to live, afraid to let their bodies and minds feel comfortable, and afraid to make money, acquire resources, or protect their physical selves and assets. If a survivor were truly living, they would be mindful of their body from the very beginning, acting on its cues rather than suppressing it into a state of self-harm, dissociation, and psychological shutdown. For example, my body instinctively repels this place. I will leave immediately after finishing my business. However, because a survivor is trapped in a death state, they suppress their body and distort the reality. I am so excellent, I am far superior to this place, I am willing to stay longer, everyone here is captivated by me. In this way, walking away is distorted into staying close, and malice is distorted into admiration. Where did I go? What did I do? What was I judging? I must be present to live, rather than shutting down and projecting onto the outside world to let them live through me. What about my own evaluation of the outside world and them? Do I accept them? Am I living just to captivate the audience below the stage, rather than moving toward places of strength in life? No. There is no me. I have shut down, projecting myself onto the outside world, allowing it to take over and move with my energy, and then, the survivor is approached, envied, assaulted, and harmed. Reclaiming the continuous state of living. Trauma survivors are born and raised in environments of assault and exploitation. When the abuse becomes completely unbearable, if they choose to live, the somatic, bodily way to do it is to fiercely expel the threat from their boundaries and refuse the violation, rather than falling into that dead, helpless, dissociative state where they are at the mercy of others. When I act through my physical body, I am alive, my body feels comfortable, and my eyes look and see with total clarity. I will keep going, step by step. I will establish my boundaries and move toward environments meant for me. Fulfilling all these physical actions takes time, which means for a long period, I will remain in a continuous, upward state of active survival. If I actually do this, entering environments surrounded by strong people with healthy personalities, my body will continuously move upward and remain alive. The absolute focus here is, continuously. To live means to keep living, to continuously survive is what it truly means to be alive. However, because I was born into an environment where living and moving upward was instantly met with envy, assault, malice, bullying, and suppression, my body, after finally reaching the breaking point to push the opponent out and move upward, instantly plummets back down. The continuity of living, the continuous physical action required to build boundaries, was shattered by past trauma. To live means to keep living and to acknowledge all truths. To survive means to constantly move upward and refuse to let toxic elements close in. It means going to truly good places instead of sinking downward, obsessing over external projections. Will our lives get better? Can we break free? Yes, but it depends on recovering our state of being alive, breaking out into living, and continuing to live. We must consistently act through our physical bodies to execute our judgments, our choices, and the life we actually lead. This is how we embody reality, how our eyes look and see with total clarity, and how we wield our own subjective agency, rather than dissociating. It takes time to recover, loop after loop. Because our emotions, material wealth, reputation, and the very legitimacy of our survival were stolen for decades, forcing us into a state of self-erasure for just as long, we must heal by acting according to our own nervous system and physical body, moving upward instead of downward. As long as I consistently act through my body, I am alive. To keep living is what it truly means to be alive. It is entirely about what I do, not what the outside world does. Judge reality by your own actions. The body is constantly calculating, what I do is the truth, it is my life, and it is my survival, not my destruction, not my sacrifice, and not my inaction. This topic has many more layers to uncover. Welcome to follow my account to catch the upcoming content on this journey. Have you also experienced that instant downward plunge, that sudden, deflating buzzkill the exact second your life started getting better, when you felt good, began to live, felt your emotions, made your own judgments, or tried to push toxic people out of your boundaries? Let's talk about it in the comments section. This time, we are taking our attention back to our own strength, and back to our own subjective agency.